Hello and welcome to this webinar. I'm Camilla Wright, one of the founding partners of RedKnot, the specialist communications agency for sports betting, and I will be moderating the discussion tonight. In just a couple of minutes, our distinguished panelists will introduce themselves, as it's them that you have come to hear and not me. But first, let me explain more about the catalyst for this webinar. The third edition of the BetTech Ecosystem report produced by Spotlight Sports Group has just been released. It is designed to provide the sports betting and iGaming industries with a deeper understanding of global regulated betting markets. To do this, Spotlight Sports Group created a single visual that showcases the companies that work in specific areas of these industries and have relationships with iGaming or sportsbook operators. Additionally, the report takes a deeper look at current hot topics within the industry. So to start, I'll ask one of our panelists, Harry Von Bear, the Managing Director of SSG in the US, to introduce the BetTech report.
Thanks, Camilla. It's a pleasure to be here. As Camilla mentioned, I'm Harry Von Bear. I'm the US Managing Director at Spotlight Sports Group. For those of you who aren't aware, Spotlight is a leading affiliate content and data provider to a number of the world's largest sports books and publishers. And before I get into detail, firstly, thank you to SBC for hosting this webinar to coincide with the launch of the report. The report's designed to be a valuable resource for the entire sports betting and iGaming industry and ecosystem, whether you're an incumbent, an investor, or just an observer. There's something for everyone there. And it's great to see the number of companies grow in the report, with an additional 80 added year on year, despite the general macroeconomic backdrop. The report highlights some of the important roles that data and content play in the ecosystem, and they're both themes I'm sure we'll touch on later. So yeah, before I kick off, I'd just like to extend a thanks to my other panelists as well. I'm looking forward to discussion over the next hour or so.
Thanks, Harry. And that's a good time to ask our panelists to say a little bit more about themselves. We hope that they will help SSG provide even more insight on where the industry might be heading in the next 12 months. So maybe Robin, you start.
Hi, thanks Camilla. I'm Robin Chabra. I'm the CEO of Tech Corp Capital. We invest and advise companies in the gaming sector. We're a collection of industry veterans. I myself have been in the online gaming industry since 2000, so that dates me, but I think the colour of my hair does that anyway.
And Eric?
Hi, thanks Camilla. Excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Eric Frank here. I'm the CEO of Odds On Compliance. We are a technology and consulting firm specialized on compliance in the sports betting and iGaming industry. Been in the industry since around 2007, so my hair is not as great as Robin's, but it's quickly catching up.
Okay, and last but not least, Wayne.
Thanks, Camilla. My name is Wayne Kimmel, Managing Partner of 76 Capital. We invest and advise sports tech companies, esports companies, and sports betting companies, mostly early stage companies that we invest in. I have to say that we're also an investor in Odds On Compliance, so it's great to see Eric on the call, Robin as well. So it's really exciting to be here. As I said, we have our investment side as well as our 76 Capital Sports Advisory business as well that works with teams, leagues, brands, operators, and family offices across the sports industry.
Thanks, everybody. So tonight we're going to be talking through the state of play in sports betting and iGaming globally. But much of the 2022 BetTech report and webinar centered around discussion of the North American market and the huge expectations for growth. So we thought we would start off by asking the panelists this year to focus on the changes to have hit the market since then, both expected and unexpected. In 2022, 5 US states officially legalized online sports betting, and Ontario became the first Canadian province to legalize single event wagering. But so far in 2023, only 2 other states have entered the market. So Eric, maybe you could help us. What has brought about the slowdown in these new markets?
Sure. So, I don't know if slowdown's the right term. I mean, we've seen the two states you mentioned launch in 2023. Ohio, close to 12 million people. Massachusetts, close to 7 million people. So, I mean, we put another 20 million United States citizens in regulated markets thus far this year. Kentucky's already passed legislation and is in the process of looking to regulate this year. Maine has been in process. So I still think there are states continuing. Obviously, people are looking at some of the bigger ones that are still sitting out there, and wondering about those. But I think there's obviously less states now left to regulate, and the process will be a little more methodical, I guess, in the remaining states, a little more political, so they may take a little more time. But we're still seeing some very big momentum. I mean, Ohio and Massachusetts are two massive sports states, and so I think you've seen the numbers already. They've really come in swinging, catching some of the larger states that have already passed.
Robin, what do you think what's happening at the moment with Ohio and Massachusetts is affecting plans for sports betting operators?
I mean, what I'd say is that this. I'll agree with Eric there. There's 23 states which are operational, and some big ones have just opened up. But what it does do actually is allow operators to focus on profitability. Many of the leading players have told the market that they're going to make profits this year. And as everybody knows, you go into a new market, it takes a couple of years at the very least before you can start making profits from that state, even if you have, say, tremendous economics of someone like FanDuel. So, for example, if California opened up this year, I guess that's a good thing, but it will definitely throw into chaos any plans to reach profitability this year. So what it will give the bigger players an opportunity to do is show the markets that these businesses are fundamentally profitable, because there's a lot of skepticism that the market isn't profitable. So I said there'll be some relief, and also it allows operators to focus on product, as new state launches are very resource intensive as well, so they can iron out any chinks in their operations. But obviously, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, there's the big states, Florida, Texas, California, what's going to happen with them. And actually Florida, there's a big legal judgment which should appear any day now, because the federal court deemed that the state's tribal compacts were in violation of sort of federal Indian gaming law. The Seminoles, who are the tribe there, challenged that, and we're going to see the outcome of that in probably the next 3 or 4 weeks. And so we'll see what happens to Florida. So that will be big news for this year. I also think the bigger issue is not the number of sportsbook states, it's the number of iGaming states. And I think momentum there has slowed considerably. And again, for people who know the economics of this business, profitability would be far greatly enhanced if there are more iGaming states. Sportsbook by itself is hard to make money. Sports and iGaming, you can make a lot of money. And so if there's any concern about slowdown, it will be around the pace of iGaming state regulation.
Wayne, would you like to add anything or disagree with these guys on anything?
Well, I think I guess I really agree with both of them, that we are at such an amazing place in the sports betting industry. I mean, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary or birthday or whatever you want to call it of PASPA being overturned. So and the crazy thing is, I think back to these types of panels and discussions that we had 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and if we had said that there were over 35, 38 states that had passed laws, all of us would have gotten laughed off of this channel or this conversation. So I think it's really, really exciting where we are. It's great that we're getting our legs under ourselves right now. But the other thing which is also really exciting is all the innovative things that are now starting to come to market. And that's one of the things that we at 76 Capital are so excited about, and really look at the next 5 years as being the time when we're going to be able to really take advantage of all the states that have now are regulated in sports betting, and just starting to think about all the amazing products that you can build on top of this.
Harry, SSG works with a lot of operators in the States already. How are you seeing the drive towards profitability and how you work with them?
I think the point that Robin made around state launches being time and capital intensive is the most important point. We've obviously seen FanDuel show profitability in a quarter in 2022, but I suspect, given the guidance we're seeing from some of the larger operators, that a handful will see full year profitability in 23, assuming there aren't too many more of these larger capital and time intensive state launches. And what I do think is interesting is there's sort of another tier of books who are realizing that actually doing it at full scale across tens of states where there is only sports betting is more of a challenge, and therefore are there more tactical ways of picking where you play, whether it's iGaming, whether it's the makeup of the licensing structure within a state, or the sort of sports, sporting preference and demographics, and sort of carving it up in different ways. So I suspect, I think in reality, all sports books need to have a pretty clear path to profitability within the next couple of years. Otherwise, there's questions on their long-term sustainability. But really, there'll be different approaches depending on what size you are and where your current access is.
So far, it's been the NFL that's, I guess, been the big thing for sports betting in the States. Robin, do you see that continuing, or as the market matures, will there be opportunities for other betting products?
Sure. So obviously the NFL is, or football is the most popular sport in the US, and if you take Europe, soccer is the most popular sport, and therefore soccer is the most popular betting sport. So it's of no surprise. But what I would say, especially having sort of spent a lot of time in Europe, relatively there isn't that much content to bet on in the US. And if you take, for example, the period after the NBA finals, it gets pretty dry, and there aren't any churn products. So in the UK, for example, there's racing, and there's a race on every few minutes, so there's always something to bet on. Or tennis is very, very popular here as a betting sport, and so in-play tennis is huge. And you do need these kind of churn sports, especially in the absence of iGaming. Otherwise, you do see these very dry spells. So it would be good to see more diversity. But that said, even within the main sports like the NFL, there's real innovation which is leading to volume growth. Everybody's seen the kind of same-game parlay revolution. Now we've got in-play same-game parlay. And also you'll see in-play improve, because in-play has been quite a patchy experience because of just the structure and dynamics of, say, football games. You've got flags and lots of stoppages. But now the algorithm developers are getting smarter at actually working out what the risk will be in these circumstances. So you'll see more uptime, more availability of prices. And so within NFL, there's still a lot of growth left. But I would say some more diversity, and racing, for example, would be a huge benefit to the US industry, if it ever caught on. I think there needs to be more diversity, more content generally to bet on.
Wayne, do you see the companies you're looking to back, do you see companies coming into this market that are bringing innovation and diversity?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really exciting things. I completely agree with Robin on that. This idea of really figuring out, taking the products to the next level, having more things to wager on, having more personalization, having customization. One of the things that I think we're all familiar with today is, when we go on to Amazon knows who we are, what we're all about, and what we want. And many times they know when you're out of, paper towels at your house, or you're out of trash bags. They know before you do. You're about to brush your teeth, and you're like, oh, I'm out of toothpaste. And Amazon's like, yeah, I know that. Like, they know that. And that's what's going to happen across the world of sports betting as well. It's going to know that I'm a big football fan, U.S. football. I love the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is my favorite player. I'm going to look for the opportunities to wager on all the things that are around him, whether it's touchdown passes or his rushing yards or whatever it is. Those types of things will show up first. DraftKings has done a really nice job. They have done a lot of, they've really taken their game up another level. Especially this baseball season. It's really nice what they've done. You see pictures of players. You can tap in there and see lots of options. And it's like what Robin was saying. There's a lot of things where you can actually now, quote unquote, churn, get people to continue to play because of all the games that are inside of the app today. So, and all of them are going to do this, and they're all going to take it to the next level and do it in different ways. But I've really been impressed lately, taking a look at one of the things that DraftKings has done.
I think just to jump in there, I think the point on personalization is really interesting. I was discussing with a few colleagues and a partner last week when we were thinking about how we evolve some of our US affiliate sites and the differences there with the UK business. And it's somewhat anecdotal, but there's almost a sort of superstition in UK and European markets. You don't bet on your own team, you don't bet on your own players for fear of jinxing them. Whereas then speaking to US colleagues and US partners, there's you bet on your favourite team. It gives a bit more action and interest in the game. So I think that personalisation really lends itself to that, as opposed to a UK personalised product is almost showing you the teams you don't support and the teams you're not interested in, which I thought was quite an interesting quirk in and of itself.
Eric, we touched earlier on what might be happening in Florida, California, and we take in Texas as well. How do you see the three big states playing in this market?
Yeah, so I think everyone had eyes on California last year. Obviously, there was a ton of money spent on the two propositions there, with a fairly dismal result for the industry. I don't think it's fair to look at that as a reflection on kind of the path forward for future states or anything other than it was just a very political. California is a very political state and in its own right, and so I think the opponents of the proposition there just did what they needed to do, and it wasn't about honestly stopping sports betting coming to the state. It was more about kind of how the process and who gets to be involved. So I don't look at that as as fear that California is never going to regulate sports betting. It's just a question of when and getting the right people to the table to strike a deal. So more on that probably in the next couple of years, or certainly not this year, but California will eventually have sports betting. It's more of a question of just getting the right people at the table to have the discussion and get it through. Robin did a good summary of Florida. So I think kind of been waiting on that. Like I've been waiting on the UKGC report to come out. So taking odds on which comes first. But I think that'll be for the few months that there was live sports betting in Florida. I think the state or the Seminoles did incredibly well with an under the radar offering. So there's a lot of desire for sports betting here in Florida. I'm based in Florida, and I know every day a neighbor knocks on my door asking when are they going to be able to bet. And then Texas, Texas, I actually did have probably had high hopes that this would happen this year. I think all the parties are aligned to get there, but I think it's ultimately might not be this year, which means probably have to wait till 2 more years because the legislature only meets every other year. So that's somewhat of a disappointment. I thought we'd see Texas happening. Could potentially still happen, but likely not.
The affiliate market is so important in America. Harry, how do you see this developing state by state, like as we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the commercial model that you take from an affiliate perspective. From our point of view, any state launch is very important from a short-term revenue generation perspective, but really the focus of the larger groups such as Spotlight is on having more sort of long-term sustainable business models that are profit generating outside of state launches. So the state launches are an added bonus, and of course, when, as Eric's just guaranteed there, that California will come online at some point, and as the other states drop as well, they're certainly a bonus, but the key is really being able to drive good returns in the more mature states as well. What is very beneficial, and I think it's both from an affiliate and a sportsbook perspective, especially in terms of the legacy DFS businesses, is that you've got large numbers of users in non-legal states where, when the states launch, you're able to monetize them immediately, and you get real great kind of operating leverage, so that money drops down to the bottom line. So I suspect, as we do, all of the larger affiliates and especially the operators have very well refined state launch playbooks in terms of a state launch, having gone through 20 or so over the last 5 years. So they're certainly valuable. They're not the be all and end all, but they definitely give a good bump in the short term.
And moving on from state launches, we touched on iGaming earlier. Robin, do you see iGaming rolling out across the states as it has, say, in Europe?
Look, I think hopefully, and I think this is my view, it is a question of when, not if, but there's nothing much happening in the short term, but there have been false dawns. New York, they try to pass something there. That would be huge. That would be transformational. Same with Illinois. I think one thing is very clear, that there's a huge demand for iGaming. I think New Jersey would be, if it was a country, would be the third biggest iGaming country in the world. I think Michigan would be fifth, Pennsylvania seventh. The iGaming market dwarfs the sports betting market in the states, where both products are present. And I think if one of the big dominoes were to fall, then I think that would trigger some more legislation, and also a lot of the motivation for states to legalize is tax revenues, and obviously the tax revenues that iGaming brings is very significant. There's nothing significant on the horizon, at least in the short term, but hopefully it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, Robin, on that point about tax revenue, I think while a state's always in need of additional tax revenue, I think what could be the catalyst is, ironically, like an economic slowdown or further slowdown, recession, in the sense that the states are then in a much more difficult position, or are more tax strapped, having additional revenue coming out of COVID. They haven't really had a need to be identifying new avenues for tax revenue. So I think if that comes, which many are predicting it could be coming in the next couple of years, then you could see the states starting to identify or look for ways to increase their tax revenue base, and looking at states like Michigan, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and scratching their head saying, hey, we have legalized sports betting here too. Why aren't we bringing this money in? And that could be one of the avenues to see. Certainly not the wave we've seen like sports betting, where 30 plus states in 5 years, but you'll get your Indianas, your Illinois, your New Yorks, and start getting state by state coming on board.
And I guess before we move on from the North American market, as an investor in this sector, Wayne, is there anything you see that we haven't touched on yet that's coming in for this year?
Well, I think there's a couple of points I'd make. Number one is that one of the things that we're so happy and really proud of is that we have companies like Odds On Compliance, like U.S. Integrity, are making sure that this industry is on the up and up, that everyone's doing the right thing. I think it's encouraging for the regulators. It's encouraging for the states to be able to now see that we're playing this game the right way. And that's why, hopefully, as Robin and Eric just said, iGaming could kind of follow as well. We're taking this very seriously. We all take this very seriously. Regulated sports betting is no joke, and it's something that I'm really happy that we're handling it the way that we're doing. And I think that that also is something that has been a new thing to the sports industry in the United States. And I think there's this major disconnect still between the traditional sports industry, teams and leagues, as well, and colleges and the sports betting industry. And so the fact that we all haven't gotten to know get to know each other that well yet. Part of it was COVID. Now it's many times there's sports betting events going on. At the same time, there's a sports industry conference going on. And so how can the people kind of be in two places at once? So there's this opportunity over the next several years to develop these relationships, to enable us all to work together even more closely. Because with sports betting, we need sports. We need games. We need college games. We need pro games. So I think that's one of the big things that I'm looking forward to in the future is developing more of these relationships. And it's something that we work on at 76 Capital really hard. We try to bring together people. We try to work on that on our sports advisory side of our business as well with Dan Bravado and what he's doing. So I think we're just getting going. We're really getting going, and we're in a really good place here in the United States.
Thanks. We touched on what the BetTech report and visual is about at the beginning of the webinar. There's 6 different sections in which we've looked at the companies in it, and as Harry said, there's growth in every single one. But Harry, we see growth mainly most in iGaming and platform providers, and a little slower growth this year in content partners. Is there any reason for this? How do you see this?
I think it probably gives a directional view that we can kind of read one or two things into. I don't think it's kind of perfectly matched up to the growth within those sectors. I think in terms of what influences it, there's 2 things that come to mind. Firstly, I think the areas that have grown more tend to be the areas that sportsbooks and iGaming providers, iGaming operators are less likely to in-source, and therefore they're growing more on the wheel. One example being some of the payment type businesses, which it doesn't make operational sense from a cost efficiencies perspective to own in-house if you get the operational leverage working across different operators, and therefore you're going to see more growth in those as sportsbook providers look to manage their costs, move towards profitability. There was the big craze of insourcing everything and doing everything in-house 2 or 3 years ago, and we're now almost at the other end of that spectrum and thinking about how can operators outsource the kind of non-core parts of their business model, which is great for a lot of the businesses that find themselves on that on the BetTech visual. So that's one reason. I think the other reason that we haven't seen content grow as much as some of the other areas is probably because it was the largest one to start with, given I think the relative importance of content providers being independent to sportsbooks, and therefore there was always going to be more third parties in the space in the first instance. So those are 2 of the main kind of reasons I would hazard a guess at. But as I said, I think it's more direction. I think the most important trend is the fact that we're seeing growth in all areas still.
And there is growth in all areas, and a lot of companies added to the visual this year, but quite a few companies disappeared. I think there's been a lot of consolidation and M&A activity over the past year. Robin, do you think this is a direction that the industry is going in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the economics, slowdown or lack of capital will have some part, but I guess there's always a kind of strong Darwinian kind of element to capitalism, and some companies will thrive and others will dive. But there are positive reasons, and I think people have touched on them already. Why some companies have lost their independence. There is a real kind of war for great casino, iCasino game development companies. So you've seen, Evolution, Light and Wonder, Games Global, now IGT and Aristocrat coming in and basically acquiring many of these studios. So you're going to see a natural level of consolidation there. Likewise, you're seeing clear consolidators in the affiliate sector. Obviously, Spotlight's one of them. You've obviously got Better Collective, Gambling.com, and others. So I think there will be a need for scale, and that will lead to improved economics. So you're going to see a lot more of that. But then also you've got within certain sub-segments, and we'll touch on RegTech, which is Eric's area. I think both Wayne and myself, and also Eric, we believe in the need to create a one-stop shop. So I think within RegTech you'll see technology compliance providers, licensing providers, AML, affordability, identity, all these areas. I think they'll come together to form a one-stop shop, and I think that will provide value to the operators because they want to deal with one supplier rather than 20. And then again, there's this other phenomenon where you're seeing operators bringing capability in-house. So you saw Banak a couple of years ago was bought by PointsBet. Banak is a pricing provider. People have seen what having sort of top tier price generation can do. FanDuel have that in-house. They're achieving higher margins. So you may see more of those companies be bought by operators. Likewise, operators may start buying more content businesses, especially maybe outside the US where there are advertising restrictions. Actually having your own media is a way to get around that and promote your products. So you'll see some insourcing / vertical integration as well. So I think it's just natural. I don't think you're going to see any more or less of it than we've seen in the past. It's just part of the evolution of the business.
And somebody mentioned that there's been a lack of capital around for financing and investment. Is this going to have an impact on the sort of ecosystem of the betting industry, or again, is this a Darwinian move? I don't know if any.
Yeah, what's interesting there, my answer to this is different now than it has maybe if you asked me a month ago, because we've seen this emergence of the kind of and implications of the AI revolution. And we've seen new technologies underpinned by AI platforms which have reduced the cost of developing new products. So an AI bot can create a really great website within seconds with no human intervention or barely any human intervention whatsoever. So if you've got a couple of people, and actually Eric's business has led the way in using AI in compliance products, so it has applications everywhere. And so you need a few people who understand AI. They get a license to say OpenAI. They do a deal with AWS for their cloud computing, and they could have a very large business and a very successful product developed with a handful of people and a relatively low amount of cost. So I think actually, I think you might see a real surge in new company creation, but actually at limited capital cost. As we learn more and people can, understand better and leverage the power of AI. I think that is a complete game changer, and we haven't even scratched the surface. But actually, we've got one person in this call who is actually using AI and making significant inroads, and that's Eric.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to use AI to generate the right investor group for odds on. Unfortunately, going the old route for now. But I think it's the time of raising money, now versus 2 years ago versus 3-4 years ago, is incredibly different. And I think investors want to see a plan, not just an idea. Want to see that you're strategically thinking, and that you're solving a problem that that the industry needs. And I think we've certainly been able to do that. I've been fortunate enough to have a great group of investors backing us. And I think having that core group is also important for getting to that next level of finding the larger group of investors around you. So I think while the tides may have shifted in the last 6 months, 12 months, and things have gotten difficult, if you have the right fundamentals around you, the right team around you, and the right vision in where you're going, I think there is the capital out there. People are still looking to invest. They're just looking to invest in the right technology, the right people, the right businesses. So I think there's still. I don't think it's all doom and gloom in this space. In fact, I think there's real opportunity for folks that are thinking about tomorrow's technology today, and certainly we're trying to do that in the reg tech space and in the compliance space for sure, because ultimately what we're selling is trying to make life easier for the industry, for everyone around us, and so having the products to do that certainly puts us in a good position.
Harry, I always think of SSG as being synonymous with actionable betting content. Is AI going to be an important part of your armory?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, we've been investing in we have a team of data scientists and content developers who have been looking at automation of content, both in terms of improving what we create, also being able to create at scale across different territories. We've been doing that for a while. I think what's really interesting over the last few months is that we've probably seen more progress then in some areas than we have seen over the last couple of years, given the availability of some of the open source AI and how that's sort of been fed into what has been done. So it's certainly something in terms of how we think about new offerings in terms of our own B2C products, but also how it can give us scale and internationalize in terms of the content and the data that we provide to sports books and publishers as well. So I think both on the content side and as Robin mentioned, the ability it can give you to significantly increase development in terms of websites and apps and API products from a B2B perspective. There's a huge amount of potential there. I think it's really about understanding how best to apply the technologies rather than doing AI for AI's sake is the key thing. But it's absolutely something we've been looking at for a while, but seeing really good breakthroughs on the content side especially.
I guess moving on from that to another area that the report covers, which is regulation and how that might affect markets. We're seeing in the UK, particularly with the white paper, more in the way of regulation coming. Eric, do you think this is something that's coming to the States as well, or is the North American market a few years different, say, from Europe?
I think you're starting to see some pushback or some negative reaction to the amount of ads that people are seeing in the US. So I do anticipate regulatory action. Certainly, the regulators are taking note of it and having discussions about it in their licensing suitability and kind of pre-launch process. Massachusetts, as a good example, certainly highlighted this is in their discussions. So I do think there will be something will have to come about, whether it is a self-regulating model. The industry itself is starting to take a look at this, and we're seeing the AGA and others kind of put out positions in a direction. The leagues taking themselves taking some action as well. So or putting together groups to talk about these issues. So I do anticipate there being action here, whether it ends up ultimately having to be the regulator taking quote unquote putting their foot down and adopting new regulations on the topic is yet to be seen. But certainly, um, the problem in a self-regulating model is sometimes it's always a race to the bottom, and you're always at the whims of the least willing participant, and so it's I think a little too early to be seen whether the industry as a whole can avoid regulation in its entirety here.
Robin, you said that your career in sports betting went back a certain length of time. Could you see there's any lessons from what could have happened or maybe should have happened differently in different parts of the world that could be brought into the States?
I think just as a general rule, I think it's the operators should get ahead of the game, and set the rules rather than have them imposed. That's what we've certainly learned in the UK. We should have had far better relationships with the regulators, with all the other political stakeholders, to come up with rules which actually would have been obviously better for the operators, but probably better and less knee-jerk for the customer actually. So I think a proactive approach is really important. But I think again, I think new technology can help here. So, for example, if you look at affordability, which is obviously a big issue here where I'm sitting in the UK, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work because someone who earns $1 million, can obviously afford to bet more than someone who's on unemployment benefit with no savings. But technology can really help. I'm a chair of a business called Department of Trust, and that uses open banking machine learning to come up with a view of an individual's affordability and various indicators, and they can do that in seconds, and it can do that at scale. So basically thousands and thousands of customers can go through this machine, and it will spit out very, very good data on affordability. So there's no need for people to submit bank statements or pay slips, or have some poor person make sense of all of those. So technology can start to, and that's where we get very, very excited about the reg tech space and using technology to harness that, because I think we can come up with a safer environment for gamblers, which imposes less friction and less cost on both customers and operators too. So, but the key thing I'd say is that it's important for people in the US, if the focus of this is the US, to get ahead. Otherwise, when politicians are responding to newspaper articles and trying to get a quick headline or to get to trend on Twitter, they can come up with rules and regulations which could be pretty damaging for the industry.
Yes, I think the content sector in the States might be one of the first to come up against this. Harry, how do you see sportsbook operators continuing to reach new customers and staying within not regulations, but I guess staying culturally aware?
I think the point around being ahead of the curve is a very important one, and not just making or waiting for regulation to change your behaviours. Using the UK as a benchmark or an analogy, I think is a good one. What we've done, kind of speaking about the content side, from an affiliate perspective in the UK, we launched with the likes of BetTech Ecosystem and Oddschecker, the Responsible Affiliates in Gambling Association, which was designed exactly for that, to set standards for affiliates within the industry and stay ahead of the regulation, work more closely with the operators to ensure we can follow best practices, and also all of us are subject to an independent audit each year as an example to show that we are staying ahead of the curve. And I think it's those sorts of practices that over time and probably pretty soon will be applied into the US as well. So really understanding what what is appropriate and not just going by the letter of the law and sort of the race to the bottom that was referenced earlier by Eric, I think. So that's the key. There's no silver bullet to it really, and I think understanding the general sentiment and the cultural differences is very important as well. Different markets communicate in different ways. So doing what's right for the US, but definitely applying some of the learnings of what has gone well and what hasn't gone well from a UK perspective is the way forward.
Right, I think we've only got about 5 minutes left of this webinar, so I may ask you all just on a slightly more general level. Any predictions, if we're going to come back here next year and talk, any predictions about what the big things we'll be talking about, or maybe things that we thought were going to happen this year actually going to be very different? Wayne, maybe I could get you to start us off.
Sure. I mean, I think there's, it's a theme I think we were talking about earlier about this idea of whether it's consolidation or companies working together. It's as an example of like what odds-on compliance and U.S. integrity are doing together with Proabet, right? So, and that's really exciting to see some of the leading people in the industry, like Eric Frank, like Matt Holt and the team at U.S. Integrity and Eric's team at Odds On Compliance coming together, solving a problem and making the industry better. So I think that we're going to see more and more of that. We're going to see, as I said earlier, I think the sports world and the sports industry, as well as the gaming industry, will start to get to know each other even better. We'll start thinking about and imagining new ways of doing new things. And the entrepreneurs are going to continue to build more and more incredible products and do things that that many of us had never even thought of before. We certainly see that at 76 Capital, where we're seeing close to 200 business plans a month in the sports industry coming our way. Entrepreneurs thinking about new ways of doing things across the sports industry and the gaming industry and how these worlds all work together. And I think that we're just at the very, very beginning of what could happen here, and it's a very, very exciting time.
Harry, last year you said that you thought that in 5 years' time the industry might look not as different as we think it might, as people think it might look. That things like dynamic pricing and personalization might take longer to develop than people think. Do you still stand by that?
Someone once told me never make a prediction. If you make a prediction, never give a time frame. So I've definitely failed on both counts there. And if you do never come back, so I failed on the third count. I think, I think I stand by that to some extent. I think what is interesting is the amount of consolidation we're seeing at a global level is probably going to intensify over the sort of next 12 to 24 months. You see some of the Flutters and Entains of the world buying kind of local heroes and having just an even larger presence. So I think if I look back 12 months, that wasn't something that was discussed at all, and has been an interesting change in terms of my forecast from 12 months ago and improvements around personalization perspective. Whilst I think a lot of the sportsbook products themselves have obviously developed a lot, especially in the US, given how nascent the market was 12 months ago, and even still is, given the growth potential across many new states. We're still quite a way away from a sports betting product that knows exactly what I bet on and when I bet. And if you look at the UK market, we're still quite a long way from that, and it's been around for many, many years. So I have no doubt it'll get there, but it's really a question of when rather than if.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point around consolidation. You are going to see more consolidation of national champions. It is amazing actually how you see the likes of again, still a fabulous company, Bet365, but in certain territories they've started to lose market share in regulated territories, and you've got people who've coming up to take number 1, 2, 3 positions for businesses which have been set up only 3 or 4 years ago, and they don't have anything like the kind of financial might or probably the technology capabilities, but they understand their customers a lot better than the global players, and and so the way the likes of Entain and Flutter responded, they're saying you can't beat them, you acquire them. But then I go back to AI, and I'm nowhere near an expert in this, but it's clearly the next epoch. But what I do know that it's driven by data, and who has the most data? It's actually the bigger players. So actually, they should be able to come up with the best models and the best trained models because they've got more data than anybody else. So actually, AI, while I think it could be a real bonus and a real driver of sort of B2B company creation, from the B2C side, though, it could reinforce the already incredible strengths of the top 3 or 4 global players.
Thanks. I guess,
Yeah.
Eric, you get the last word on this.
Sure. Just a couple of predictions from me. I think come back in a year, we'll be talking about the next iGaming state again, but I think we'll be a lot closer, if not kind of pending legislation about to pass. So I really do think you're going to see at least one iGaming state come through in the next 12 months. Consolidation continue heavily over the next 12 months in the industry. And last prediction, I think we'll also be able to talk about Wayne's winning a bet on Jalen Hurts to be the Super Bowl MVP next year. So
I hope so.
yeah.
Well, thank you all, panelists, for giving us such an interesting discussion and putting your necks out with predictions for the next year. We hope everybody enjoyed the discussion, and please visit spotlightsportsgroup.com to download the BetTech Ecosystem report and visual. Thank you.